After Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, executive producer Mustafa Akkad wanted to move further with the series and bring back Michael Myers. Deborah Hill planned to produce the film while Carpenter teamed up with Dennis Etchison, who under the pseudonym Jack Martin had written novelizations of both Halloween 2 and Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, to write a script to Halloween 4. Originally, Joe Dante was Carpenter's choice in mind of director for the project. However, Akkad rejected the Etchison script, calling it too cerebral and insisting that any new Halloween sequel must feature Myers as a flesh and blood killer. On February 25, 1988, writer Alan B. McElroy, a native of Cleveland, Ohio, was brought in to write the script for Halloween 4. The writer's strike was to begin on March 7th that year. This forced McElroy to develop a concept, pitch, story, and send in the final draft in under 11 days for the 1988 film Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers.
Myers has been locked up since before she was born. He's never laid eyes on her.
6 bodies! Sheriff, that's what I've seen between here and Richmond. A filling station in flames. I tell you, Michael Myers is here in this town. He's here to kill that little girl and anybody who gets in his way.
Let them fight.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little town, Jim.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Chills and Thrills. Connor here along with Chris, and we are slowly working our way closer and closer to Halloween and continuing spooky season for us here on Chills and Thrills. Today we continue with Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. So, Chris, I know you said that you haven't seen this in probably a much longer time than I have, because this is I go back to all of these Halloweens pretty often, kind of like the Friday the 13th as well. And so on your rewatch, how did you feel about Halloween 4 after not having watched it for so long?
Oh, I thought it was really good, and it kind of brought back all the reasons I remember liking it so much when I was younger. In the DVD days, I crushed this movie. Watched it many times in the DVD era. Never owned Blu-ray, never owned 4K. Had really, outside of maybe randomly catching it on TV or a streaming service randomly over the years, I would say I haven't comfortably sat down and watched it beginning to end and since the DVD era. And yeah, it's really solid. It's the true Halloween 3, really, in a lot of ways. Halloween 3 as it should have been, but I enjoyed it a lot. There's a lot of great things. It's always easy to just be like, oh well, the movie holds up really well. It holds up really well, but it's like there's a lot of good stuff at play here with the dialogue and the characters and the music and some of the scenes and setups, and it's just like a really effective, efficient, kind of quick pace moving kind of horror movie, and I just really dig it. You could say it's not terribly innovative or terribly mixing up the premise of the formula, but it does the formula really, really well.
I agree. This was one of the ones that it was the VHS days for us. I wore this VHS out. Halloween 2 and Halloween 4, my VHS tapes, they just like expired because I watched them so much. They went to crap, the tape got messed up and they just ceased to be. And same with you for the DVDs. I wore this one out, and then now having it on Blu-ray and the 4K coming out, I enjoy this a lot. As you said, it's a return to form. I think they take it back to the formula, but they capitalize and they do it very well. And I like the inclusion of some of our new characters. Like you said, the music, I think the music by Alan Howarth is really good. And it's we'll talk about Michael Myers and the mask and everything a little later, but it's like after coming off of Halloween 3, this is a very high note for the franchise coming off of the disappointment of Halloween 3 and one of my favorites when I was a kid. So I enjoy this movie very much. Getting Donald Pleasance back was a pleasant surprise when I was younger. And then, being introduced to Danielle Harris for the first time as a little kid, and then growing up with her in other films. And this is just it's a very well done Halloween film after what we got in Halloween 3, and bringing Michael back for a pretty strong sequel to Halloween 2.
Yeah, I don't know anyone who saw these movies as a kid that didn't like fall in love with Danielle Harris. Like that's just what it is, And even watching it as you get older, it's a lot of child actors and actresses in movies sometimes that the performances aren't really what they need to be because children don't have as much experience, so their performances, it's hard to get a good child actor. But like in this movie, there's just always been so many scenes where I always just felt so bad for her character, and it's because like Danielle Harris is giving such like a good sad performance. Like it's like you just feel bad for this little kid. Like even before all of the bad stuff really starts to happen to her, like you just feel terrible for her because of the circumstances she's in. And so it's just one of those things where it's like, how does your heart not bleed for little Jamie Lloyd?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the acting in this by her is very well done. And I mean, the film has a lot of really good like cinematography, and like it's very it this is one of the films in the Halloween franchise where it actually feels like Halloween, the holiday. So I mean, that was a big thing for me with this film, why I like this so much. It has a very good setting, it has a very good tone. And I mean, just like the opening credits for this film like set the tone with all the Halloween like landscape and things like that. It's very very good reintroduction for those first like 5 minutes. And we get them, of course, for some reason transporting Michael Myers again close to Halloween. I don't know when they're going to stop doing that in this franchise, especially come later down the road. But it's just one of those films that it gives you a very like good and close to Halloween feeling, and in a lot of these films you don't really get that. So I mean, I appreciate this film for that.
Yeah, the autumn vibes, it definitely kind of has them, It's the atmosphere.
Exactly. That is exactly what I wanted. The atmosphere of this film is phenomenal for the Halloween holiday. So
just a human thesaurus over here.
I keep telling you, I don't know what I would do without you. One of these days, you're gonna believe me.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I'll take the compliments. I appreciate it. It's nice to be needed.
Hey, at least one of us is on here.
Oh, the whole thing comes from you anyway. I wouldn't be recording anything if we weren't talking about stuff.
Yeah, but I fumble half of my English without you.
That's okay. I ramble too long. It's all right. We'll stop. Right. We'll stop glazing each other here and just move on.
Well, let me give you some background on Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers is a 1988 American slasher film directed by Dwight H. Little, written by Alan B. McElroy, and starring Donald Pleasance, Ellie Cornell, and Danielle Harris in her film debut with Michael Pataki. It is the fourth entry in the Halloween franchise and a direct sequel to Halloween 2 from 1981, and marks the return of Michael Myers as the primary antagonist following his absence in Halloween 3 Season of the Witch from 1982. Initially, John Carpenter and co-producer Deborah Hill intended to create an anthology series with the first two films being connected. Halloween 4 was originally intended to be a ghost story, but after the poor reception of Halloween 3, the idea was abandoned. Halloween 4 was released in the United States on October 21st, 1988, and despite mostly negative reviews from critics, it has developed a strong cult following since its release and has enjoyed positive reappraisals in the years since its release. This film begins the Thorn trilogy story arc, which would be continued in Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers in 1989, and Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers in 1995, and would finish with that film. So there is a little background on Halloween 4.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, my biggest criticism is I wish that they just had the guts to leave the 4 out of the title and to just call it Halloween: The Return of Michael Myers, or even Halloween: Michael Myers Returns. That would have got the message across pretty clear to viewers and audiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it says that this is the beginning of the Thorn trilogy. Like,
Hardly, though. I mean, only in the sense, and I'm not trying to cut you off here, but only in the sense that like this is a character arc that like all these characters in this setting is followed up very directly with Halloween 5. But Halloween 5 is what really turns it into a quote unquote Thorn trilogy. This doesn't have any of that stuff going on.
yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I was going to say. Is the only connections there are some of our main characters, as in Dr. Loomis, Rachel, Jamie, Sheriff Meeker, like those 4 being in the next film. Kind of, those
Yeah,
are like the only
4 and
connection.
5 are very much a two-parter in a lot of the same ways that 1 and 2 are, and then it's sort of, even though it's a year later, it's sort of this very direct continuation, like the same aesthetics, the same cast, and all that stuff. And then 6 is more of just like this weird epilogue to 5. 5 plants some seeds that 6 kind of runs with. But even in 5, it's hardly like, okay, so you see a thorn tattoo and you get this mysterious man in black. But outside of that, like, they're not really delving much into any of that nonsense. And so it just leads to 6 kind of forging all of this stuff. And, to retroactively turn this into the Thorn trilogy is kind of a weird thing that I've never really got.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I mean, this is, in this film, we still have like a supernatural, like Michael Myers, like he's, Dr. Loomis. He's not human. He's not a man. He kind of doesn't know what he is, but he's not human. And we don't, like you said, we don't get any glimpses of the Thorn trilogy or anything like that. So maybe you could say 5 and 6 are like a Thorn duology or something, but it's not.
Yeah.
I wouldn't count
But
it.
even then, I would say that 4 and 5 are more of the duo. 6 is kind of just, it's like 4 and 5 are this 2-part thing, and then 6 is like a sequel to that. 6 is like this weird spin-off from it almost.
Okay, I can.
It doesn't, and I mean, it doesn't help that 6 was like 6 years removed from number 5, and 4 and 5 came out basically. 4 and 5 are basically back to back, and then 6 was like all these years later. So it's like, it's just got this feeling of like feeling removed from it.
When we get to 6, we will talk about those 6 years in between and how much the wheels were spinning in the production room for that film.
Yeah. What the Halloween 6 we could have gotten, who knows?
Well, why don't we go ahead? We'll get into a trailer on Halloween 4. We'll get a plot synopsis read off, and we'll come back and knock out some numbers, fun facts, and our favorite categories on the film.
10 years ago, on the night of October 31st, a small Midwestern town fell victim to an escaped killer. Under the cover of darkness, he carried out the most horrifying mass murder on record. 16 people in cold blood. Ever since that night, no one has forgotten his name. And Halloween has never been the same. Now, Michael Myers has come home. He has returned for one more night of unholy terror.
Michael!
Somebody help me!
He's here to kill that little girl and anybody who gets in his way.
Oh, God!
Who's gonna be next?
Halloween 4, the return of Michael Myers.
Maybe nobody knows how to stop him.
On October 30th, 1988, Michael Myers, who has been comatose for 10 years since the explosion at Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, is being transferred from Ridgemont Federal Sanitarium to Smiths Grove Sanitarium. During the transfer, when Michael overhears that he has a niece living in Haddonfield, he awakens, kills the ambulance personnel, and heads back to his hometown to kill her. Dr. Loomis, who has also survived the explosion, learns of Michael's escape and gives chase once again. Loomis follows Michael to a gas station and diner, where Michael has killed a mechanic for his coveralls along with a female clerk. Michael escapes in a tow truck, igniting the gas pumps, causing an explosion, destroying Loomis's car given by Ridgemont in the process and disabling the phone lines. Loomis continues to pursue Michael on foot. Loomis then hitches a ride with a priest in a pickup truck. In Haddonfield, Laurie's daughter, Jamie Lloyd, suffers from nightmares about the Shape and is bullied at school for being the niece of the Boogeyman. On Halloween night, her foster parents Richard and Darlene go to a party and leave their teenage daughter Rachel to babysit, forcing her to cancel a date with her boyfriend Brady. Rachel picks Jamie up after school to buy ice cream and a Halloween costume. Jamie decides on a clown costume when Michael suddenly appears to steal a new mask. He goes after his niece but flees when she screams in horror. That night, as Rachel and Jamie are trick-or-treating, Michael breaks into the Carruthers' house and kills the family dog. Loomis arrives in Haddonfield and warns the new sheriff, Ben Meeker, that Michael has returned. They immediately go out to search for the girls. At the power station, Michael throws an electrician into a transformer, plunging the entire town into darkness. He proceeds to kill most of the town's police force, prompting the locals to form a lynch mob. Meeker and Loomis find Rachel and Jamie and take them to the sheriff's house, where Brady is having an affair with Meeker's daughter Kelly. They barricade the premises as Loomis departs to find Michael, who has already snuck into the house. The lynch mob accidentally killed a teenager who they thought was Michael. After Meeker leaves to respond to the shooting, Michael kills Brady, Kelly, and a deputy as Rachel and Jamie flee to the attic and onto the roof. Rachel lowers Jamie down to safety but is attacked by Michael, falling to the ground and losing consciousness. Pursued by Michael, Jamie runs down the street and runs into Loomis. They seek shelter at the school, but Michael finds them and tosses Loomis through a glass door. He chases Jamie through the school until she falls down a flight of stairs. Michael prepares to kill her when Rachel reappears and subdues him with a fire extinguisher. The lynch mob arrives and agrees to help the girls get out of Haddonfield. Along the way, they meet a lone trooper who tells them there's a substation up the road where they'll be safe. Michael, who has been hidden underneath their truck, climbs aboard and kills the men, including Earl. Rachel then takes the wheel, throws Michael off the truck, and rams into him. Meeker and Loomis arrive with the rest of the lynch mob and the state police, while Jamie approaches her uncle and touches his hand. As he rises, Meeker and the others shoot him until he falls down an abandoned mine shaft. Back at the Carruthers' house, Darlene goes upstairs to run a bath for Jamie when she is suddenly attacked. Loomis hears her cries and sees Jamie in her clown costume holding a pair of bloody scissors, reminiscent of when Michael killed his older sister. Rachel, Richard, and Meeker look on in horror as Loomis sobs, realizing that the evil inside Michael has infected Jamie. Alright, how about we jump into some numbers here quick. So Halloween 4 had a budget of $5 million and it grossed $17.8 million at theaters. So what is that for our inflation numbers?
Yeah, these days that would be about a $13.5 million budget and a box office return of a little under $50 million. So I mean, a pretty good little turnout there. That's anyone can do the math. That's more than 3 times, that's always a good return, especially, for these horror movies. Like we say, we're like a broken record to repeat it all the time, but these horror movies that are made for cheap, if they break even in theaters, they're basically sitting on a miniature gold mine, because these horror movies, especially when you're part of a franchise like this, it's evergreen. The licenses and the re-releases and the physical media and the box sets and the merchandise, like it's all like it's evergreen.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think, like I look at these numbers, or I hear these numbers, whatever it may be. And like today, you would think a $5 million budget and a gross of 17.8 million. It's like, well, that film didn't really, it didn't
It's
really do
nothing.
that great. It's it's
Yeah, it's
nothing,
peanuts. Yeah.
and that would almost be questionable nowadays. Like, do we make a sequel? It only times it
Yeah,
or
well,
multiplying your
well,
budget by
because
three
well,
times.
yeah, but the same thing. Like, if you were to make, I think kind of for a weird comparison, like I think the first John Wick is kind of in that neighborhood of like it kind of was made for like a relatively small amount, like 15, 20 million. Maybe I'm way wrong, but the first John Wick was not very expensive, and it didn't make a ton, but it was just this very positive reaction, and you could just feel like the mushrooming effect, the ballooning effect of like the impact of that movie. So they make a sequel, and then every sequel is just exponentially bigger. And it's kind of like that thing where it's like, okay, you have to consider like, yeah, nowadays if someone made $17 million in 2025 money, that mostly just means very, very few people saw that movie in a theater, just because that it does not take much to make 17 million. Movies make 17 million in their sleep these days. But if you were to say 50 million, okay, if that's a movie that cost 15, 16, 17 million dollars and it pulled in 50 million just in North America, because I'm pretty sure these movies, like, pretty sure most of their box office numbers are like that get tracked are like North America exclusive. I don't think there's very many like big global releases of these 80s low budget horror movies, not that's like tracked in any kind of big way. So it's like, if you dropped a horror movie that cost 15 million and made 50 million in North America, like, yeah, that probably would get you a sequel. These are, and people forget, like, these aren't really, especially the Halloween movies, they're not really big kind of studio movies. They weren't like back, like 2 and 3 were Universal, and the Friday the 13th movies were Paramount. But these other Halloween sequels were much more of like kind of like more of a mom and pops kind of a thing, like this lower tier in terms of like production, promotion, things like that. So they weren't like, so like glammed up and highly promoted as some of the studio releases of these franchises.
Yeah, and I'm not really knocking it at all. So I mean, it did get bad reviews from critics, but then like
They
fans came out
review
of this
every
movie,
scary movie bad. How many Halloween movies get good reviews from the critics? The first one,
right? But I mean, fans came out of the theaters loving this one. Like they were loving the return and like of Michael Myers and like the return to form of for the first two Halloween films. So I mean, like
Mhm.
it was eventually like word of mouth and people started renting it and stuff. Like this movie made a lot of money from VHS and DVD and now today Blu-ray sales. And so I mean, it's still doing well to this day. I mean,
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw it was a rented VHS tape. They didn't have the DVD on the shelves. Rented the VHS tape, and yeah, it's a good time.
absolutely. These were, I mean, I like along with the Friday the 13th films, I saw these films at a way too young of age that I probably shouldn't have, and
Yeah,
it made me a fan for life.
yeah, yeah. What's the worst thing it did to us? Turn us into horror movie fans,
Yeah. I it made you, I'm not sitting here out in the streets killing people or anything.
Yeah, heaven forbid. Oh my gosh, we're on a podcast where we talk about these movies. What a horrible fate.
Let me keep going with some numbers here for you. So Rotten Tomatoes has Halloween 4 at a 39% approval rating with an average of 4.2 out of 10. It holds a 34% rating on Metacritic, a 5.8 out of 10 rating on IMDb, and 78% of Google users liked this film, which I would probably agree as pretty much as always, along with the Google users. I'd say this is like a solid B film. I mean, it's definitely a fun Halloween film, and for a slasher film in general, I think it's pretty dang good.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those where it's like, yeah, there might not be like a lot of crazy standout aspects to be in love with it, but it's also like, what's there to really hate and bag on about this movie? What does it do so terribly? Uh, you know.
I got one thing it does terribly, but I'll get into it later.
Oh, okay, okay, all right, fair enough. That'll be a
I
fun
have
discussion to have.
yeah. I have two more numbers for you, of course, the most important ones. And Michael Myers is on screen for 14 minutes and 38 seconds, or roughly about 17% of the film. And this film has a kill count of 17, including one dog, which averages to a kill every 5.1 minutes. So we sped it up quite a bit here.
Yeah, that's how you keep the people entertained. It's interesting that Halloween 3 was 82, and then Halloween 4 wasn't until 88. And during that sort of 6-year time gap, you had franchises like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street kind of churning out multiple entries. I'm pretty sure in 88, I think Friday was on number 7 by then, something like that. And so, it had a few entries more, even though Halloween started first. And I think by 88 or 89, you were already on Nightmare 4, I think, something like that. My memory might not be perfect, but so, you were already on Nightmare 4 after just a few years. This one had this kind of gap. And when you consider the gap for the return of Michael Myers, you're talking about a 7-year gap. So the whole slasher genre had kind of changed and evolved a little bit by the time Michael came back. So you can see that they're trying to adjust to the different standards.
Yeah, and Freddy, that he doesn't kill a lot of people in his films. I think the most he killed was in like part 2, and that was 10. So clearly Halloween they were trying to keep up with the other slashers, and then Friday the 13th, who averaged between like 15 and 18 a film. So
yeah,
17, we're up there with them.
Yeah, because the big thrill of these movies just became of like, oh, how are they going to kill this person? Like, what are the new, wild, inventive ways that we're going to have someone get killed? So, there's always, it's not just, 10 random people getting stabbed in the back and then it's over. It's like they have to find new and interesting ways to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I when I was a kid, I being a young guy, I came for the kills, Michael Myers, and a little bit of nudity. So
yeah, surprisingly, always pretty short on the nudity are the Halloween movies, though. They're always
compared to other franchises and other slasher films,
they're a little more classy. A little more classy.
Until we get a couple movies down the road.
Yeah. We'll get there.
We absolutely will. All right, that is all I have for the numbers section. So I'll break off some fun facts because I put a ton of these in here because I wanted to talk about them. So my first one for you here, this we've said this one 100 times, but I threw this one in here. After Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, Mustafa Akkad wanted to move further with the franchise and bring back Michael Myers. According to producer Paul Freeman, a friend of Akkad with a long list of credits to his name, explained to Fangoria magazine in 1988, everybody came out of Halloween 3 saying, "Where's Michael?" So in this film, we delivered what they were asking for.
Yeah. I mean, that's really the long and short of it,
I mean, if that's what the people want, I mean, you give them what they want, and you get a halfway decent box office turnout for this. I mean, I got a couple numbers for some other films that came out the same year, and we'll talk about some comparisons with how they did as well.
Yeah.
My next one for you here is John Carpenter was approached by Cannon Films, who had just finished 1986's release of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, to write and direct Halloween 4, but he declined.
Man, I know, like, here's the thing, the easy thing is to be like, oh my gosh, John Carpenter on board Halloween again for Halloween 4 would have been fantastic. But it's like also, it also could have been potentially, if it's something he really didn't want to do it. And clearly, if he wanted to, he had the option. It's like if his head and his heart wasn't in the right place, that probably, if he had done it just for money or this or that or the other thing, it probably wouldn't have been a very satisfying Halloween 4. It probably would have been something pretty disappointing and things like that. So it's like, oh yeah, we could dream about the potential of what a Halloween movie made by Carpenter in the late 80s would have been like and how good it could have been, but if it wasn't something that he was sort of activated by, I wouldn't have wanted to see it,
Yeah, I mean, if he would have came back and directed this film and gave us like the Roy Scheider like Jaws 2 performance of directing, when you don't really want to do it, but you still give us your A+ performance, I would have been all for it. But normally when directors, when they're forced to do something like there's there's films I've seen to where a director does a first film or something and then does a film down the road when they don't want to, and it just turns out terrible. And it's you definitely wouldn't have wanted that when you're pretty much promising the fans that this is going to be something to come watch with the return of Michael Myers, and then it turns out to be this like sloppy, crappy movie, and then you've just ruined the franchise, possibly.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
So I'm absolutely okay with what director Dwight Little did with this film. So
Yeah, for sure,
a little bit actually on Dwight Little right now. And after viewing the film's initial cut, director Dwight H. Little and producer Mustafa Akkad decided that the film's violence was too soft. And so an extra day of what they called blood filming commenced. Special effects makeup artist John Carl Buechler was brought in to create the thumb in the forehead kill and the neck twisting of the redneck scene in the film's final act. So those two kills were not originally in the script.
Man, and I gotta say that that thumb in the forehead kill it leaves a big impression right at the beginning of the movie. So I enjoy that they put that big moment in there.
Absolutely. That was one of the kills when I was younger that it kind of gave me like the heebie-jeebies, like it just made you think ow instantly,
The
like
idea
what
that
in the
someone would
world?
stab their thumb through your skull, like their thumb bone is so strong that it could just pierce through the thickest part of your skull, which is your forehead, basically.
Yes. Showing right away that Michael Myers is becoming or is a supernatural killer.
Yeah, he's Superman apparently.
My next one here for you is John Carl Buechler was hired as the film's special effects artist because of his rising reputation for creating great special effects for horror films. Within 1988 alone, Buechler provides effects for the films Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, while also being the director of that film, A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, and of course this film, Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers.
Wow, so he pulled triple duty on the effects work and directed one of the movies. That's insane. That's crazy.
Yeah, and
Well,
I mean,
we got to see some movies that he was involved in that were less butchered than his own movie that he directed.
yeah, I mean the special effects that he does in Halloween 4 and A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, I would love for him to have the same freedom with Friday the 13th, his own film, as he did A Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and this film Halloween 4.
Yeah, if the MPA didn't have such a raging hate fest with his movie,
Some of those behind the scenes of his Friday the 13th are pretty gnarly though, so I mean
Oh, I know. Broken record time again. Like there must be ways with digital technology and AI that if we can feed the rest of the movie to the AI and then feed that crappy footage to the AI, there's got to be a way it can use the knowledge to make the crappy footage at least look 50 to 60% better, if not seamless. It's got to be. It could do it. I'm sure it could. If it can turn like a live action person of someone dancing into like a cartoon of someone dancing or into like a stop motion, and like it can clean up some crappy looking footage, I'm sure.
one of these YouTube nerds that's listening, help us out, work your magic.
We're talking about in some cases seconds of footage. We're not talking about like overhauling 60 minutes of the movie or anything like that. Like you're talking about a few seconds that we just got to clean up and make a bit more presentable, and there's tools out there that could certainly help it happen.
Yeah, because he does masterful work in these two films, Halloween 4 and A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4. So, I mean, what we see isn't a lot in his film Friday the 13th Part 7, but man, what could have been from the glimpses we see in Halloween and the Nightmare on Elm Street films that he did.
Indeed.
So this one's a little bit longer, so just bear with me here. The late night scenes caused issues with the cast. Garland Wild, a gaffer for the film, was injured during the scene between Brady and the Shape when he dropped a light and accidentally slit his wrist. So there's one. He was rushed to the hospital, and then in addition, Ellie Cornell accidentally stabbed her foot with a loose nail on the set of the rooftop scene and also cut her abdomen open on a nail while sliding down the roof in that same scene.
Feet and nail stuff, and just any nail stuff in general. Always, I don't know, something about it just gives me the heebie-jeebies. I don't like it.
It's from us watching Home Alone when at a young age.
Maybe, yeah, maybe. I don't know.
And then the last part of that one is during most of the night scenes, Donald Pleasance became so cold that he wore a hat for most of the scenes, unacknowledged by the crew. This caused for over 6 hours of footage to be reshot.
Wow.
So yeah, it was some cold nights, some bad accidental times. The roof scenes were not fun from what I've dug
Yeah,
deep
it doesn't.
about those.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it. And from what I understand, it wasn't the way that, maybe this is another movie I'm thinking of, but wasn't the way they did that is that they kind of just built a roof out kind of like in a field or in an area, so that it wasn't the full house that they were on top of filming. They just built like a roof that was just like think of like cutting the roof off of a building and just putting it on the ground. And like that's kind of how they filmed a lot of that, I think.
Yeah, you're dead on. And then
Okay.
the top of
Okay.
the roof still ended up being around 20 feet high off the ground. So I mean,
Well, yeah,
even with
yeah.
just
So
the
I mean,
roof.
yeah, it's still a pretty, it's still a pretty sizable thing to make it in any kind of way screen accurate. You have to. So, but that's wild because it plays so well when you watch it. It doesn't feel like some hokey thing.
No, it doesn't. I think it looks really good and it plays out really well, and that's a fantastic sequence in the film. So I'm sure we'll
Hmm.
talk a little bit more about that here in a little bit.
Hmm.
This one's kind of fun. I put this in here to see what you thought about this one. Dwight H. Little, the film's director, had his own ideas about the motivation of Michael Myers in the film. In his view, Michael's obsessive pursuit of his niece was a misguided attempt to connect with her. Michael simply lacked the social capacity to interact with her in any other way other than using violence.
Hmm. I mean, that's certainly an interesting perspective to kind of, that it was like, that it's to imply that it's some kind of uh familial affinity or bond or something, and he just, the only way he knows how to express himself is through murder, but like he feels like he should have a connection to his family. Kind of, it gets a little, squickier when you consider some of the things that happen in later entries in this franchise, or are heavily implied to have happened or overtly indicated to have happened. And so I mean, it does cast a weird kind of energy over the movie that he's, pursuing his niece throughout the film. To what end, is kind of, it can kind of get a little dark, I suppose. But that's an interesting take, I suppose.
I thought so. I thought, that's something that a way to look at it that I had never thought of or I had never heard anybody bring up. So when I read that, I was like, "Ooh, let's see what Chris thinks about that." And I think
Yeah.
I don't think
And
it's far off. He's clearly
yeah.
lacks
And
mental capacity.
weren't there weird iterations, or maybe I'm thinking of other kind of what if discussions that have been had about these movies and videos, but like, was there like some kind of maybe like concept of like of Michael like sort of like taking her under his wing a little bit, like he's trying to get her to be a killer too, like a little bit more like overtly trying to do that more so than like the way it kind of plays out in the movie itself. Like
I'm not
I thought
100%
I thought I
sure about
remember, and
that.
maybe I'm purely, maybe that's, a thought of a dream, of a memory of a conversation, or whatever. But like, but I wonder if at that point, like if there was any sort of evolution or stages of that at any point. That's interesting.
I know that there were talks about Danielle Harris's character taking over as the killer in part 5, and then I know there were talks of her being the killer in part 5 and also Michael Myers coming back in part 5.
Okay,
So I don't know if
maybe
they would have.
that's kind of, yeah, maybe that's what my memory is kind of triggering. The idea of them like both killing, like that would be interesting to see, I suppose. I'm glad they didn't. I think generally that idea would need a lot of work, but
Yeah, I don't know if they would have teamed up or would have just been two
yeah,
separate
and
killers
that starts
or
to get a little hokey. That starts to get a little hokey. But Daniel Harris running around with that clown outfit, killing people with that mask on, like that certainly would be some horrific imagery. Some demented imagery for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. This little girl stalking around town.
Yeah.
George P. Wilbur, who was cast as Michael Myers in this film, wore hockey pads under the costume to make himself look more physically imposing. So any or most Halloween fans know that one.
Yeah, and there's something. It's weird to say like it looks like it, but there is something that always feels a little kind of like padded and awkward about his physique in this movie. Like it almost feels like you can kind of like the minute someone says that, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That looks right, you know.
Yeah, it looks a little too bulky in certain
Hmm.
scenes.
Yeah,
Like
or
a
just bulky where it wouldn't be because like your frame, if your frame's not built for bulk and then you just bulk it up, you don't just look like a bigger person naturally. You look like a smaller person bulked up with material on you. You know.
yeah, one of the scenes that always gets me is when he stands up tall on the rooftop. His abdomen and midsection and thing. It just looks a little funny to me. So that I
Yeah, I
always
know
think of
exactly
that.
what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
During filming of this film, the cast and crew made it a point to take it easy on Danielle Harris, as she was only a young child at the time, and made sure that she was not scared too badly and knew that none of it was real. And to this end, George Wilbur regularly removed his mask in front of her in order to remind her that it was just a movie and that he was not going to hurt her.
Yeah, that's good. You know, you gotta to the extent that you can, you have to look out for the kids and make sure that they're being properly taken care of because when you're young and impressionable, the a simple misunderstood moment can become, what they call a core memory, and like trauma can come in all shapes and sizes, whether it was intentioned or not. You grow older and learn to understand it, but that initial kind of like wound doesn't really heal the same way.
Well, I mean, in the behind the scenes stuff, that you see, it looks like she's having a great time. Like in this one, in the fifth one, I'm sure I'll say this again come our next episode for the fifth one, but she looked like she's having a blast and a good time, and like everyone gets along well and things like that. And I mean, if you watch the special features, like she said it was like having like one big family, that was making a movie. So I mean that is always good to hear, especially what was she 9 or 10 around the filming of this
Yes.
film.
Yeah,
So I mean,
something
that's
like
fun.
that. Yeah.
Lisa Wilcox auditioned for the role of Rachel Carruthers, and Melissa Joan Hart auditioned for the role of Jamie in this film.
Who? Repeat that back again.
Lisa Wilcox, who actually played in A Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and 5, and then
Huh.
auditioned for Rachel, and then Melissa Joan Hart auditioned for the role of Jamie.
Huh. Interesting. That would have been unique. I ultimately think that Danielle Harris was a great cast, but I mean, I could see I could see some alternate casting for Rachel, but something about I think we landed in the right spot with both of them, in my opinion.
I think so too, and I mean, I don't think you replace Danielle Harris in this film
No,
for
no,
anyone. I
you
mean,
don't
you
replace
could
Danielle Harris in any of these Halloween movies, and we'll talk about that later.
absolutely. You could talk about possibilities for Rachel, but I think
Yeah.
Ellie Cornell did. I think she did great in this film.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's a perfect fit for the role, and like, yes, you could have cast other people, like Danielle Harris. It's like that's the layup, that's the home run. Like you're not gonna tamper with that casting, but you could do others for Rachel, but you wouldn't want to,
Absolutely. In the original script, Sheriff Meeker was killed in a battle with Michael in the basement where the furnace was knocked over and caused the house to catch on fire. Originally, the house was supposed to be up in flames during the infamous rooftop sequence, but it was eliminated due to budgetary constraints and Sheriff Meeker was kept alive.
Yeah, I like that Sheriff Meeker was kept alive to kind of like put Michael down as the finale. I think that's a good dramatic thing. But also, like, can you imagine like the logistics, not just money wise, but the logistics of doing like the whole rooftop sequence while it's also on fire, and you've got a child actress and like a stunt man. Like, it just sounds like that would have been a nightmare in terms of not just the money to do that, because you got to think about it. If you're burning the set or setting a set up that can be burned and then maybe reburned or however that works, like again, that just sounds like a money nightmare and a logistical nightmare, because you got to think, if you're worried about people tripping and falling on a rooftop set, like what if you start getting flames involved with it? Like, it sounds like an absolute great concept, but a nightmare to film.
Yeah, something I would have loved to have seen. Like you think of in Halloween Kills, they had the actual like burning building, and they only had so much time to get the shot. So if it went wrong, they were screwed. So like in this film, would it have been the same thing? But like it would have been cool to see that shot of Michael again with the flames behind him and having the
Oh yeah,
rooftop sequence.
in silhouette. Yeah, it would have been cool. And these days, you would have at least a degree of special effects that would make that much more feasible and possible. But back then, it was like you want to film someone on a roof, you either got to film them on a roof or film something that looks like they're on a roof. And if you want to burn something, you've got to burn it for real, or burn something that looks real.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought that one was fun, and it's something that you would have loved to have seen, but like you said, would have been a nightmare to shoot.
Yeah, yeah, indeed.
So 1988 was the first year in which all three of then top horror franchises, Halloween, Friday the 13th, and A Nightmare on Elm Street, all released new films in the same year, with this film, Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, and A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. Additionally, the first Child's Play was also released in 1988, as well as Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, Phantasm 2, and Pumpkinhead, all of which would also become major horror franchises.
Yeah, my I'll give away. My older brother was born in '88, so he was born in a good year for horror franchises.
Yeah, this from just what I've read there, I think 88 knocked it out of the park for some good franchises.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
So Halloween 4 did relatively mediocre next to other horror franchises at the time, with A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, grossing just over 49 million worldwide, making it the second highest grossing horror film in the 1980s. Child's Play, which grossed just under 29 million domestically. Friday the 13th Part 7 grossed 19 million domestically. So their Halloween 4 got beat down pretty bad by some other franchises in 88.
Yeah, kind of lost in the shuffle a little bit, sadly.
Well, like you said a little earlier, like Friday the 13th, like they were steamrolling through the 80s, and then once A Nightmare on Elm Street got rolling, they were doing the same thing. They were steamrolling and took over. They surpassed
Yeah.
Friday the 13th.
Yeah, and you're talking like part 3, part 4, that was kind of like in terms of the popularity and the zeitgeist, like that was the peak really for the Nightmare franchise. Like that was where, 3 I think is, cuz they always say the thing, the reputation of the last movie kind of sets the stage for the next one. And 3 I think was so well received that when they did 4, even if 4 was awful, it would have been huge. But then 4 was also maybe not as good as part 3, but still really, really, really good, and embraced like the fun of it in a way, and kind of made Freddy the star and kind of this like pop culture fun guy, and so like 4 was kind of like exactly the movie it needed to be, and then after that it kind of falls off.
Yeah, so while those guys were just running the 1980s, Halloween was sitting here and they were at a standstill, and finally we get another film, and then you get Child's Play, and if you watch the original like trailer and stuff to that, I mean that movie looks super interesting. You don't know what you're getting, so that did big bucks, and then we get to Halloween 4, and it's it's just they weren't riding on a high note like the other franchises, so they almost had to like restart. Of course, yeah, we see that the poster and the advertising says The Return of Michael Myers, but
Yeah.
what are we gonna get after Halloween 3? So I mean, especially when those other franchises were riding on a high note. I mean, of course those, and it's what were they battling against at the time? What other films were coming out when Nightmare on Elm Street came out? Things like that.
Exactly. And Child's Play is interesting because even though the first one's 88, we talk about this a lot about how the beginning of one decade and the end of the next, like in terms of the films representative of that era, you can kind of see, in the late 80s, you can kind of see where the 90s was going to be coming from. And at the beginning of the 90s, you kind of get some kind of carryover from the late 80s. And I think Child's Play, like among this batch of 1988 movies, Child's Play is one of those that like that concept feels so of the 90s. It feels like, what's the next thing you do after just the slasher? Like, oh, let's have the killer possess a doll, and then the doll is killing people. It just feels like that next sort of twist on the traditional spin that kind of feels like, oh yeah, that's a very like, this supernatural thing is very much like of the 90s. Like, it's taken the Freddy Krueger thing and making like the smack talking foul mouthed villain, like going that next step of making it like a kid's toy, but a killer kid's toy. It's like that just feels so 90s. It's like kind of ahead of the game a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So what as we continue down the road, like Halloween kind of gets lost in these franchises when it comes to the money a little bit. They still make a good amount, but I mean Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on Elm Street were in the 80s, those were the two top dogs, and they were
Yeah,
competing back and forth.
and the Halloween films didn't really have a big studio home. They had Mustafa Akkad, but there wasn't the Paramount. There wasn't Universal. There wasn't New Line Cinema, even though New Line Cinema is much smaller than like a Paramount at this time. But it's like they didn't have that like official kind of production company and studio that was sort of shepherding them along in this direct way. It was kind of just they were like the indie dogs after part 3. They were kind of just like small potatoes, just kind of doing it however they could do it. Until part 6, when it kind of went studio. It kind of went big studio there. And then, but we'll get to that when we get to that. 4 and 5 are in that very sort of like indie horror realm a little bit.
Was 6 when they went to Miramax, or was it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
I was not 100% sure if that was 5 or 6. So, okay.
Yeah.
That is when they stepped in. So I have one more for you, and it's kind of just a basis on Halloween 4, how it was received. And overall, fans to this day are split on Halloween 4. Some praise it, others hate it. However, it is usually regarded as the third best film in the franchise and seen as a class act, much like the first 2 films. The addition of Michael's niece, Jamie, was also a great decision, as it quickly becomes a staple of the franchise.
Indeed. And I mean, maybe one day, like, you talk about the what ifs and the hoo ha's and what could be's or whatever, but it's like, man, the franchise didn't really do Jamie justice in the long run. For these 2 movies, it's great. And then it didn't align to get a proper kind of like, could you imagine a trilogy of movies with Danielle Harris as Jamie that kind of gets closed out in this kind of interesting and satisfying way? What could have been?
And once we get to that, I have a lot of background information on that. And
Yeah,
I mean,
it'll be an interesting discussion, but like these movies like 88, 89, and they should have had her third movie for like 90, 91, 92 at the latest, something like that.
well, even in 95, when Halloween 6 came out, she was old enough.
Yeah,
And,
and no, it still could have been her. Like, no matter what time they made it, it still absolutely should have been her. But man, to get them in like rapid succession as like a true kind of trilogy would have been really, really good for her, and I think for Donald Pleasance. So
I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more on that. So that is all I have for the fun facts. I will have Chris go ahead and give me your favorite character for Halloween 4.
I mean, it's weird to kind of do a tie, but like, Loomis is the perennial kind of, he's always the favorite. But I mean, Jamie Lloyd, man, Danielle Harris just kills it as that little girl. You feel so bad for her. You're rooting for her so hardcore. Yes, she's a kid, she's a child character, so it's not like a lot of like interesting character stuff. But it's like, and it's easy to have sympathy for a child in a horror movie, but there's plenty of annoying child protagonists in plenty of genre movies, and Jamie Lloyd's certainly one of the strongest iterations. Like I prefer her to a character like Tommy Jarvis for sure, and it's like I like Tommy Jarvis, it's just like one of those things. It's like, who doesn't like how do you not like Jamie Lloyd? Jamie Lloyd's just a great character. I don't know.
Absolutely. This was a tough one for me because I went back and forth, and I ended up going. I chose Rachel. I liked her as like the protective, like older sister type character,
Yeah,
and
she's almost a proto New Age kind of Laurie in this movie a little bit.
yeah, and like they state earlier in the film, like, we're not really sisters, and that doesn't mean I love you any less. And like that was a great quote from Rachel in the film. And like she has the boyfriend problems where the boyfriend is like going off and like messing around with another girl because Rachel's not like giving up the goods soon enough or whatever
Yeah,
she
which
may
like
be
what a
doing.
piece of crap he is. I just gotta say, like, what a douche nozzle. Like, it never clicked when I was younger, like as much, but it's like, dude, like what a peckerhead he is, like, sheesh.
I just got pissed off. Oh, so you move on to the
Yeah.
next best thing?
Yeah, man. Like they don't really strongly like affirm that like are they boyfriend girlfriend or in they in that kind of phase of like they're trying to date each other. Like it doesn't really kind of explicitly state how much of a thing they are, and even some of the characters in the movie seem to kind of debate it. Like, is this something she's trying to lock down, or is this like a long term thing? It's kind of played kind of vague. It's kind of implied that it's a less committed thing at this point, but it's like she's like, I thought you were different from other guys and all this stuff, so it seems like it's in the early stages of it, but that's still like, it's still like, wow, like that's how you do things in the early stages of it, like when you're just getting to know, like you've got, that's how little your commitment is. Like, she blew me off, so I went and banged another chick. Like, geez, dude, like, I mean, you must be nice to have it that good, I guess. I don't know, that's some low standards.
Oh man, but like I mean, she's our final girl. I mean, I think in this, she has more
In
final
essentially,
girl
yes. Essentially,
traits.
yes. Yeah,
She
this is, it's a lot of the dynamic that Lori had with the kid she was watching in the first movie. That's just that the kid here is a much more important and pivotal role, but Rachel has that kind of role here.
Yeah, and she plays it very well. She shows that she's caring. She does the protecting. She pretty much goes to battle with Michael Myers. She sprays him with the fire extinguisher, and like she's lowering Jamie down on the rooftop and risking her life there. And it's just I had to go with her having siblings, like so I have siblings, so I just liked the protective aspect of her in this film. So that is why I chose her.
Yeah, not a bad choice at all. Not a bad choice. Can't go wrong. I mean, I can't do a 3-way tie with Loomis, Rachel, and Jamie. You can't go that. You got to pick someone, but not a bad choice at all.
I don't think we get enough of Loomis for me to choose him in this film. What we get of him is
Yeah,
great, but I don't think it's enough.
yeah. And boy, do I love these Loomis sequels. I'm a big fan of seeing Donald Pleasance back again in this side of the franchise. And then there's the Jamie Lee Curtis side of the franchise. But man, I love these Loomis sequels. But yeah, I mean, we could have, I could watch 80 minutes of just Donald Pleasance just going full Ahab hunting Michael. I could watch a trilogy of that.
Giving us the spectacular monologues and
Yeah, I know. Almost every line he's got is quotable. It's like it almost, it's like it's almost becomes a joke when like you just know that they're just like setting him up to be like, he's not human, it's evil. Like it's like they're almost, it's almost like becoming a trope in and of itself. But I will never stop loving hearing Donald Pleasance refer to a human as an as an evil, as a not human. I love it.
absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that one. It's just something about his voice and the way he says things. It's just it's a very good delivery. So I agree with you. I'll give you my favorite score for the film, which I'm glad I re-listened to the score the other day because I actually typed in on my notes the wrong one. So my actual favorite score for this film was the Shape Attacks or Shape Attacks, and it's when the supposed rednecks of the film, they're driving out of town and they're heading towards the state police, and he attacks all the guys in the back of the truck, and you get like that the Shape Stalks theme kind of in a different kind of beat, like a different incarnation of that.
Mhm.
And it eventually comes down where you get the actual Halloween theme where Michael's riding on top of the truck and Rachel's driving, and that whole, it's like a 2.5 minute track. It took all of the parts that were great about the Halloween theme, which are my two favorite parts, which are the theme where Michael Myers is stalking somebody or chasing somebody, and then the actual Halloween theme from John Carpenter, and just put a little Alan Howarth twist into it and combined it into one track, and it became my favorite of the film.
Yeah, that's actually was my favorite track as well. You know, I couldn't say anything more than you've already said. It's excellent. If I were to give a shout out to another piece of music, it's one that was called "In the Shadows," and it's particularly at a moment about 1 minute and 22 seconds in, where I think it's this sort of like accompanying the good old boys kind of getting ready to go after Michael. I believe, you know, the kind of like gearing up for battle type music, and it's just like it's such a good moment musically, that kind of like, you know, gathering the troops kind of a feeling, you know. And so I really like that track as well, but it was a close second.
All right, so what was your favorite quote then from the film?
So favorite quote for me, I always have a couple of contenders for stuff like this, but if I had to go for my two favorite dialogue exchanges and then my bonus favorite Loomis rant, we'll do that. So you know, favorite dialogue exchange would probably have to be between Kelly and Rachel, you know, where they're discussing, you know, the Brady situation, you know, and she says, "I've got a right to do what's best for me." And then Rachel says, "Don't you mean what you do best?" And it's just like the nicest way of calling her a hoe that she possibly could, you know? And
A
so
nice little 80s clap back.
yeah, even as a kid, you're like, "Oh," you know, like it's such a
You
good
got burned.
moment. Yeah, exactly. You know, have some coffee, put the coffee all over it. So good. And then I love at the beginning, you know, it's an easy, you know, line to land, an easy moment. But you know, when the guy goes, one of the attendants goes, "Jesus," and the security guard says, "Jesus ain't got nothing to do with this place." And it's like, man, it's like that's a line like it never doesn't go hard when you drop a line like that in a horror movie. You know, like it's just like you want to land something, you land a moment, you land it like that. And you know, to finish me out here, you know, my favorite kind of Loomis getting angry and saying stuff is when he goes, you know, "6 bodies, Sheriff, that's what I've seen between here and Richmond. A filling station in flames. I'm telling you, Michael Myers is here in this town. He's here to kill that little girl and anybody who gets in his way." Like, how do you not love a good Donald Pleasance rant like that?
Yeah, he absolutely knocks his roles in these films out of the park. I had three for you as well. So I have two honorable mentions, and then I'll give you my favorite one. So one of the ones I liked was when Loomis is getting ready to head out the door, and one of the police officers stops him, and Loomis goes, "Maybe nobody knows how to stop him, but I've got to try." And he just like scoots out of the door really quick, and it's just like even Loomis acknowledges like he may not be able to stop Michael. You know, he's shot him multiple times, and he knows this, but he's got to do something. He can't stand by while more people are killed. So he's going out to join the hunting party, and I liked that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then I had one from the same security guard as you did, and it's when they're it's in the beginning as well, as they're picking up Michael, getting ready to transport him. And he goes, "Yeah, the one you're picking up, just thinking about him gives me the willies. A decade ago, Halloween night, he murdered 16 people, maybe more, trying to get to his sister. Nearly got her, too. But his doctor, of all people, shot him 6 times. And then he set him on fire, and both of them nearly burned to death. Yeah, I'll be glad to see this one gone. Oh, yes, indeedy." And it just, it's one of those lines that it seems that they put in there for like people like if you don't remember the first two or haven't watched them in a long time, it's almost like a little refresher.
Oh yeah, you absolutely have, like, it's absolutely there for that. You know, you kind of, it's like you either do the kind of recap of the old footage like a lot of these movies did, but sometimes with some of these movies, especially because Universal was responsible for 2 and 3, it wasn't always as simple as just like, oh yeah, just get the footage out and use the stock footage. Like if it was between different studios and production companies, you'd have to license that footage and pay for that material. And you know, for low budget movies, that wasn't always so easy, you know. And like, you know, I think even for like Evil Dead 2, when it was all the same filmmakers and crew, like I even think that, you know, that was part of the reason why they had to reshoot like a prologue for that movie instead of actually just using footage from the first movie, because there was like, it was like a rights and a licensing and a this and that and the other thing. So they like were making like they made like a whole new mini movie, you know, something to that extent. So you know, it's like you got to work it into the dialogue in some way if you can't get any kind of like proper prologue or recap going on, you know. And I think that's a good way of doing it, you know, outside of like a newsreel kind of documentary thing, like a Dateline, you know, whatever. But you know, and I dig it, you know. And also that sequence has my favorite like needle drop moment in the movie, which is, you know, when she's like, all right, let's move him, and then they just drop in the main Halloween theme. It's like, you're back. Like not only is Michael back, but the music's back. Like we're back on board with the franchise here.
Absolutely, and it's one of those lines to me that as a younger kid, I just I it went right past me. You know, it was just another line in a movie. I paid attention to it. I caught it. I knew they were talking about the first two films clearly, and then as you get older, you realize like, oh, that's a plot dump right there. You know, from the previous two
Yeah.
films. So
And as a kid, I had to make sure that I didn't think too hard about the details of how many people he killed, or being like, oh, Loomis shot him a lot more than 6 times. You only shot him 6 times in the first movie, you know, and all that stuff. Like, I'm like, just let it go. Don't overthink that. The details don't matter.
I I was that way too in
Yeah,
films when they're like, "Oh, so many people died," and then you
yeah,
go back to the first one and it's like, "Oh, well, no, he more people died than that."
yeah,
I'm a
yeah.
consistency kind of guy as
There's a
well.
Yeah, there's a bit at the beginning of Halloween Resurrection, you know, where the guy says something like, also killed like, what was it, 2 nurses and a paramedic the same night. It's like he killed a lot more than that in Halloween too, you know. Like, you know, it's like the little details. It's like, it's always annoying, but like you can write it off that the people in the movies don't have their facts straight.
They're only they only know what the news is reporting to them, I guess. Or this guy's locked
Yeah.
up, so he might not know very much at all.
Yeah, it's all, you know, hearsay and rumors. I mean, how many times have you heard a warped version of the actual story, you know?
Right. So that was my second one for you, and then my favorite one, it was from Dr. Loomis, of course, and this one was my favorite just for the delivery when they're at the scene of the crash of the ambulance, and they're saying that Michael's muscles would be totally useless and give the troopers a chance to search, and Dr. Loomis or Donald Pleasance just like drops this banger of a line. He goes, "You're talking about him as if he were a human being. That part of him died years ago." And I was just like,
Yeah.
"Ooh," like that.
Yeah, like just giving Loomis some legendary shit to say in every one of these movies. It's like this section of the franchise is epic for that. You know, it's iconic for that.
That's one of those quotes like as a kid, it just gives you the chills or heebie-jeebies like, "Ooh, like what do we got coming up?" If that's the type of line he's delivering here.
Indeed.
So I'll give you my favorite scene of Halloween 4, and then I'll let you take over our favorite death after that. So
Alrighty.
I chose the rooftop chase scene, and it's just we got the shape stalks theme playing the whole time. We get the Halloween theme, and it's just like you can put yourself in that, and what are you gonna do? You're getting chased on top of your roof on your house by a serial killer who had if you're Rachel has just killed your boyfriend or a guy you're talking to and killed the officer that was in the house, he's killed everyone in the house, so it's just you and Jamie left. And it that's just a spectacular scene all around it, with Rachel having to lower Jamie down and still try to escape out of the way of Michael and things like that. It's just that whole sequence is like tension filled. Like, what are they going to do? How are they going to get out of this? Being 20 feet, 25 feet in the air on a roof with a serial killer. So that was easily my favorite scene in the film.
Yeah, it's a great, super memorable sequence because it feels like it could almost be the finale of the movie. You know, like you could see a version where like they throw Michael off the roof or something. I like all of the material where Michael is in the sheriff's house, just kind of dispatching some people. Like the reveal when he's like sitting in the rocker, and he stands up, and then like when he's slowly ascending the stairs, and Brady's trying to load the shotgun and all that stuff. Like all of that material to me is just like really, really good. And I just remember like it feeling the most intense when you have a character who's trying to reload a weapon as Michael's slowly approaching, and you're like, you freaking idiot! If you could just get the shell in half a second quicker and take 2 steps back, like maybe you would have had an opportunity to not get killed. It's like I love sequences like that in movies where there's kind of like an arbitrary ticking clock. So that whole, it's kind of like a multitude of scenes, but that material of Michael in the sheriff's house is just good for me.
Absolutely. I mean, I love everything in the house or, at the house in this film. Once they get to the sheriff's house, if I could pick that, 25 minutes that they're at Sheriff Meeker's house, as I would, but I feel like that would definitely be cheating a little bit.
Yeah, and I remember as a kid, I was always just, probably because when you're a kid, you kind of see certain archetypes in movies over and over again. So then when you see characters in other movies, you're kind of transposing your opinions of certain archetypes onto them. So you've seen the movies where like the boyfriend or the brother, the whoever kind of makes the heroic sacrifice and gets like killed, like Rob in Friday the 13th Part 4, where he's like getting killed in the basement. He's killing me, like you kind of think about like the likable characters that have the somewhat noble death. And so like you kind of like project that onto Brady a little bit when I was younger, of like, oh, like he's generally a pretty good guy and he dies to save them. But then on this rewatch, I was like, this piece of crap needs to get killed. Like, on the rewatch, I was like much less sympathetic towards this guy that I always like as a kid. Like, I'm always like, oh, he seems like a reasonable guy. Kind of a shame he got killed. But then older, I'm like, man, Captain Douche Nozzle's got to get like eviscerated, So it's like, it's just a different perspective.
Well, you wanted him to get killed in this one, and so what was your favorite death scene in this film or kill from this film?
So his was satisfying, but my actual favorite death was Kelly getting impaled with the shotgun. Usually I don't go in for the kind of like absurd, kind of nonsensical death scenes that don't really seem to add up or make sense. But something about that one was always just so abrupt and so brutal to me that it's like, oh, he's got the shotgun, and you think for a moment like, is Michael gonna shoot someone with it? It's like, no, he just literally impales her with the end of the shotgun. Like, it's so brutal and so vicious. Like, damn, it's like that's how Michael Myers gets it done. Like, he's not even gonna shoot you, he's literally gonna blunt force trauma an object through your body. Like, just crazy.
That was one of the ones I was battling with back and forth. It was between that one and the one I ended up choosing, which was Brady's death. And I think I liked it because, they see Michael standing down by the fire, and Brady, he's trying to reload the gun and thinking, he's going to be the hero guy. And Michael he is taking his sweet time walking up the stairs. So Brady has all the time in the world. So I was like, idiot, like run up the stairs with Rachel and Jamie and reload up there, or take 5 steps back.
Bro. You can't be reloading some shells while you're moving backwards. Like, geez.
Yeah, like multitask here. So like,
and gosh, if I had a dollar for every time that kid said, "Get up there, Rachel," like, geez, dude.
Well, and then even as he gets closer, like you see he gets to the top of the landing of part of the stairs. It's like, okay, like common sense tells me like I'm gone. Like I know that he's killed people in this house. Like I'm struggling to reload this thing. Run up to the attic and finish reloading up there and hide and try to shoot him while you're hiding or something.
Yeah,
like
he's clearly not going to chase you and pursue you, so you might as well get the distance and then strategize. You don't gotta make your stand on the landing of the staircase.
Well, and then I applaud him for standing his ground and hitting Michael with the gun, and then even after you just hit this guy with the butt end of a gun, I can't remember 100% if it was a rifle or a shotgun.
I think it was a double barrel, right?
Okay, yep, double barrel shotgun. And if that doesn't break his jaw, hurt him, whatever, you come back and you try to punch this guy. Okay, so your fist is harder than the butt end of a shotgun. And it's common sense tells him to run. So it was almost like it was my favorite death because he did go out fighting and trying to protect Rachel and Jamie. But then it was my favorite death, like you said, because he was kind of a slime ball in the film and he was stupid for not running. But it was one of the more brutal deaths in the film as well. So I went with that one.
Yeah, it's a good one for sure.
It was just that one frustrates me just like you. So so here's to the point where I said there is a bad thing that I want to talk about in this film. And it is the Michael Myers mask. Since we are talking about all of these, I cannot stand this mask. I hate it. There are different iterations of it in the film, with one where the mask has a pink face and blonde hair, and it's just
yeah, that's kind of like the stunt moment when it's throwing Loomis out the window, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like this weird stunt version of the mask or something, like some double that they had to use or mistakenly used or something like that. Yeah.
So I know I kind of asked you if we want to rank the masks, as we're going through, and it's one of those things to where if we're going to include the Halloween 3's Silver Shamrock mask, I think Halloween 4 goes at the bottom and the Silver Shamrock masks are in the 3 spot with Halloween
certainly
2.
of the certainly that's a defensible position, and certainly of the 3 Michael Myers portrayals of the masks, I honestly think that they get worse each time. I think the original is the best, and then second is just an aged and damaged version of that mask, so it's a little inferior. And then this one is I don't know, it's weird to describe it as too plain, because there's always a Michael Myers mask is kind of just like a plain white face, but there's something about this one that it feels, I don't know, it feels too hard, like they were trying to emulate no detail. And so then it just feels very kind of the more plain and lacking detail they make it, the more it feels kind of cheap. And it also there's sort of blank that still manages to have a sense of character just because of the design and the lighting, like in the original movie. And then there's kind of blank that just seems kind of plain and uninteresting. And it goes from being creepy to it's kind of just looking at a flat surface, And so this one, this mask, whether it's how they light it, how they perform it, how it's sculpted, how it's painted, it just feels for lack of a better word, it's just very kind of bland and not scary and not intimidating.
Well, and what sucks is on the VHS cover or the DVD cover, on the poster for this film, they absolutely got the mask right.
Yeah, that's a good poster. Yeah. The so good that they used it again for the poster for part 5.
But it's just how do you get the mask right on the poster? I get it, but we get this tragedy mask in the film. I don't know.
Yeah. That's the kind of lower budget filmmaking thing going on there,
Give me $5 million. I think I'll spend enough money on the mask to get it right.
I mean, how do you at least not just take a bajillion frames and shots from the first movie and just sculpt a mask that looks almost as close to identical to that as possible? I don't know. How do you need so much mask R&D,
I feel like we'll be talking about this for many films to come.
Yeah, yep, indeed. Indeed.
So that's the only negative I have on this film, in my opinion, is the mask is very subpar compared to Halloween and Halloween 2. And then do we want to get into our comparison? Do you want to launch us off on our comparison for Friday the 13th Part 4 and Halloween 4?
Yeah, and it's a shame because Halloween 4 is, I have a very positive opinion of Halloween 4, especially relative to some of the Halloween movies before and after it. But compared to Friday the 13th, the final chapter, it's like, well, Friday the 13th, the final chapter is an absolute banger. And so it's hard. Like, I got to go Friday 4 over Halloween 4, which is a shame. I wish Halloween 4 synced up with some worse Friday movies so that the head to head matchup could be more favorable to it. But it's like, you're getting a really good Halloween sequel up against one of the best entries in the Friday the 13th franchise. So yeah, it's Friday 4 over Halloween 4 for me.
All right, and man, that is tough because I like the portrayal of Michael Myers in this film, but I mean, what is it? Ted White in the final chapter that does just a remarkable job. And then I like you said,
And look, and I'll say Jamie Lloyd. I've said it earlier. Jamie Lloyd better than Tommy Jarvis, but that doesn't make this movie better than that movie.
I would agree with you on taking Jamie over Tommy Jarvis, and it's like just the Friday the 13th Part 4. Like the kills stack up a little better. I mean, I like the side characters more than I like Brady and others in this film, even though like I like Sheriff Meeker in this film. Donald Pleasance seems kind of like a side character in here. But I mean, I think Friday the 13th Part 4 overall is a better film, which sucks to say for me because Halloween 4 is what when I was younger was just one of my absolute favorite, not just Halloween movies, but like movies in general because I watched it so much.
Yeah, and look, and I'll say like Danielle Harris over Corey Feldman, Donald Pleasance over anyone in Friday 4. Like the pieces, there are pieces of Halloween 4 that it's like, yeah, on paper, like, yes, that aspect's better. But if you're talking about the whole kind of tapestry of the film, like Friday 4 just hits really, really well. And I mean, you got Crispin Glover in there, like making a fool of himself, like it's just that fun kind of tapestry of like that. It's that teen kind of borderline comedy mixed in with this great slasher movie, and it's this kind of culminating chapter. And this is kind of like, it's a bit more standard issue, and it's like, again, it's got good pieces, but it just doesn't hit the same way.
No, Friday 4, it continues the formula from 2 and 3, and
I would say it perfects
it.
That formula. Yeah, agreed.
Absolutely. So you're 3-1 in favor of Friday the 13th, and I am 2-2. I am all tied up.
Yeah, it's crazy to break it down like this, but I think the next discussion there will be easier.
I don't know if I feel
well, maybe not
way.
for you. Maybe not for you. Okay, fair enough. I forget these things.
We are this is what makes these conversations fun. So I'm glad you recommended this.
Yeah, this will be fun. This will be a fun talk to have because I know some of us, some heretics on this podcast might have different opinions about movies than I do.
Well, Halloween 5 was one of the Halloween films I really liked when I was younger because it brought back Danielle Harris.
We will have I'm sure we'll have a very worthwhile discussion about Halloween 5 next week.
Yeah, so if you haven't figured out, that is all I have for Halloween 4. And on our next episode, Halloween 4 was followed by a direct sequel with Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers, released October 13th, 1989, which, of course, we will be looking at on our next episode. So, yeah, that should be fun because I haven't watched that one. That is one of the sequels I have gone back to probably some of the least often out of the sequels since I've gotten older. So that'll be a fresh rewatch for me for the first time in for sure a couple years.
See, that's interesting for me because there was a period of time where I owned Halloween 5 on DVD, but had only been able to rent Halloween 4. So there was and I just really liked that kind of era of the franchise. So there was a period of time where I watched Halloween 5 on DVD all the time. And like the prologue section of Halloween 5 was like the way that I was like able to see a little bit of Halloween 4 when I didn't own Halloween 4. So it was kind of like this weird reverse thing where it's like, I know like it for me, like 5 feels more like the first one because it's more the first one I was familiar with a lot more than 4, and it's the first one I own. So it's like it's this weird reverse thing where it's like I always had like a more familiarity and connection with 5 than 4. So it'll be interesting to go back and kind of revisit it. There's many things that I know just off memory that it's like I know that worked a lot when I was younger. I know it won't work a lot now. So we'll see how it goes. Maybe it'll be more or less favorable. We will see.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get out of here, of course, and get on to our next episode, I will say thank you for joining me, Chris, as I can't wait to dig into Halloween 5 from the sounds of the end of this episode. It'll be we might be battling on that one.
Well, maybe just once we start talking about how that relates to Friday the 13th part 5.
This is true. Other than that, it should be a fun discussion because, like I said, when I was a youngster, I really liked Halloween 5. So we'll see how I like it. You know, being a little bit older, we'll see how my perspective has changed on it next week after I rewatch it.
Indeed. Also, I just want to point out while we're on the topic of Halloween 4, like the explosion at the end of Halloween 2, like it makes no sense for Loomis or Michael to look as good as they do in this movie, considering that. Like, yes, we just hand wave it and like, oh, you know, they even say he set him on fire. It's like, dude, he did not set him on fire. Like he exploded the whole room that he was in, you know? It's like, and Loomis gets away with like a burned cheek and a burned hand, you know? It's like, what? Like what dive move, what like jump out of the window move did he pull? That's all that happened to Loomis, you know? Like, I appreciate it. I like having those characters back in this movie, and of course, you know, you're not going to bring Donald Pleasance back looking like Freddy Krueger or something, you know, like I understand that, but like they really had to kind of hand wave a lot to be like, oh yeah, they're both just burned a little bit, you know, like oof.
Well, those are probably your 2 most popular characters in the franchise, you know. What do you do?
You're not allowed to blow them up.
Not permanently.
Even
no.
after you blow them up, you're not allowed to blow them up.
Well, not permanently. We got to keep them rolling. So again, thank you for joining me. Thank anyone who's out there listening. Halloween 5 on our next episode. So your homework, as always, is to watch it and then come listen to us talk about it. So thanks everyone out there, and until next time.
Even if by some miracle Michael is conscious, his muscles will be totally useless. Give the troopers a chance to search.
You're talking about him as if he were a human being. That part of him died years ago.